You know, Benjamin Franklin was asked in 1787 after they finished the Constitutional Convention, "Sir, what do we have here, a monarchy or a republic?" He said, "A republic if you can keep it." The way we can keep it is we can put Donald J. Trump back in office. And as I stand here today, I want to offer my most confident and full endorsement of Donald J. Trump because
And welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Paris. Don't forget to like the videos. If you like the videos, share them far and wide. And, of course, subscribe whether you're watching on YouTube, Rumble, Locals. The best place, of course, is to follow us on Locals, peoplespundit.locals.com. And before we get right into the show of the day, that reminds me, November 7th, do not miss it on November 7th. Coverage starts at 6 o'clock. We are going to have coverage of the Kentucky governor's race, which, by the way, we have a list of counties we're going to go over probably before that in a show. But then, of course, it has to be in a show before because it's going to roll in so quick. We have the state poll and open times that are on Locals right now. So when coverage starts, be there, be ready, be waiting, because even though we expect to wait a little bit for some returns, there will be the first polls that close at 6, all right? So we're going to try to roll along with that. And we have to go over Kentucky, which is among the first. We have to go over the key counties to watch in Kentucky, not only those counties, but who needs to do what where. Where does incumbent Governor Andy Beshear need to perform in Jefferson County, for instance? What's his target there? Otherwise, he could be in trouble. And we're going to go over that all first, but coverage will be of the Kentucky governor's race, the Mississippi governor's race, Ohio, both ballot initiatives, and, of course, the Virginia State House, the House of Delegates, and the Senate control over the state legislature in the state of Virginia. All right, so there'll be a lot going on. We're going to be running much of the night until it gets dull, boring, and what's the word, Laura? Basically, until we wrap up, until we know what it looks like. All right, still a little iffy on what's going on with whether or not we're going to have some shows this week on Mar-a-Lago. Locals later today. In fact, the show probably be a little bit quick today because later today, I'd like to do some testing, which you guys always participate in, streaming directly to Locals. And then members of YouTube, you'll be getting that soon. It's time to up the game, especially on election coverage. We always have the maps, the results. They're all going to be on People's Pundit daily for all of you guys to check out. That's where all of the archives for the results are and whatever data we offer. That's on there now, but you'll all get that. But we want to run some tests on, like, going in and out of different screens. The only way to really do that is live. So we're going to do that throughout this week here and there. Locals, we're going to do it first, and I'm going to try to do it today. All right. We're just waiting on a API for some lower thirds. I may even do the test without it. And if I think we need to do another test, I will. But I just want to make sure everything that is animated and moving, and the shots and everything are going through. All right, so I don't want to take too much time. Played that clip from Carson. We got a new poll from the Des Moines Register, which is, of course, Ann Seltzer's poll. I wanted to play that because I don't want people to forget how important of a role Ben Carson played in 2015 and 2016. You have to remember, there are two different things with these wishful thinking people out there. And by the way, it's just straight polling misinformation, has gotten really bad on X, formerly known as Twitter. Simple empirical data that is easily verified and easily checked is being misrepresented. For instance, what was this poll in October of 2015 is being represented by people who claim to be, pivotal people in Republican politics ahead of the Iowa caucuses. They're misrepresenting numbers that are, they're demonstrably false, what they're saying. That you can go and you can check them. For instance, Ben Carson was never approaching 40%. Ben Carson's voters were never firm. Their minds were never made up. There's a lot of it that I want to go over, but we have this new poll out today. It shows Trump ticking up about a point, which, by the way, was about Perry Johnson's support. And then Larry Elder is also out. Both have endorsed Donald Trump. And we're going to talk about which candidate in light of this Iowa poll, because you have got to beat Trump in Iowa. He's going to go on to stomp you in New Hampshire. He's going to stomp you in South Carolina. And then Super Tuesday, he is on the cusp of, there's not a single Super Tuesday state with majority thresholds where Trump is either not meeting or exceeding those thresholds. And then B, there are also states that have minimum thresholds to even qualify for delegates in the state that no candidates are hitting. So if they do not beat him in Iowa, and they'll try even if they come close to make it about a so-and-so did better than expected. The problem with that is that throwing all of your eggs in a basket in the state of Iowa is going to hurt you in New Hampshire. It always does, and it always will. Unless, of course, you look at the other dynamic nobody is talking about when they're looking at their October wishful thinking comparisons. Donald Trump is no longer an unknown quantity. Going into the Iowa caucus with varying leads with evangelicals that are backing Carson, then they're backing Trump, then they're backing Cruz. He is no longer some unknown quantity from Manhattan or Queens who has a liberal record of saying liberal things. Can he be trusted on abortion? This is now a former sitting president, beloved by the party, who implemented a Supreme Court or nominated 3 people to the Supreme Court, which resulted in the overturning of Roe v. Wade, something everyone who claimed to be the guardians of the Iowa caucus wanted done for 4 decades, but could not get done. More than 4 decades. So there's a lot of things we need to point out. I'm going to first just simply read the poll. But Ben Carson played an important role for a very simple reason that he told, and it was after Iowa, obviously, because he had suspended his campaign. Cruz crew, which is now DeSantis crew. It's Cruz crew 2.0 is DeSantis' crew. Played a dirty trick in Iowa. Maybe Ann Seltzer would not have even been wrong, although she did understate the share of the electorate that evangelicals were going to make up, which is a big part of what we have to talk about with the consolidation argument today. Because when you are making these comparisons, the Des Moines poll in October of 2015, and then the final poll, and then the final result, you better understand what was right and what was wrong with those polls before you make those comparisons. Otherwise, you're going to look like an idiot, which is what everyone from Steve Deese to others look like. The decent endorsement comes down. You have all of these people, Bob Vanderplatz and others, that kept saying, wait until he announces, wait until he campaigns, wait until he gets these endorsements, wait until Kim Reynolds, wait until this. Well, all I see is Kim Reynolds' numbers falling along with DeSantis's, Trump inching higher and higher. The Des Moines poll is a poll where it is, I would put it in the Trump, I wouldn't put it, it is in the Trump bearish tranche, which means it does show that Trump has an advantage, but it shows his opponents higher than the consensus of other pollsters, and it shows Trump's support lower than the consensus of other pollsters, which puts them in the bearish tranche. So, it's being pushed as the gold standard, and we'll talk about this a little bit more. I have my reservations about Ann after I saw her do what she did in 2020. She tanked a poll because it was bad for Joe Biden, because the Pete Buttigieg campaigns and the Joe Biden campaigns were complaining that it was too promising to Bernie Sanders and that they screwed up because Pete's name didn't appear on one interviewer's script because she had a setting on her computer that cut his name off the script. It's ridiculous. It was totally, even Patrick Murray from the Monmouth poll joined in with me to point out that excuse for tanking a poll is not a real excuse. And that something else happened there. Sadly, it was when she partnered with CNN and the Des Moines Register together that happened, which led me as a pollster to believe, someone who works privately for clients, publicly for the public, for you guys, and then also have done work for media in the past, has done work for media. But I can tell you in all my experience, she got bullied by the media outlets. And anytime, that was a great, great disappointment, because as I was coming up, Ann Seltzer was a big deal. So for her to have done that, caved to liberal entities, was very, very disappointing. And also, I got to tell you, in August and September, Joe Biden was never close to Donald Trump. We were the most accurate poll in Iowa in 2020, and even more accurate than her. And Donald Trump never was leading by less than 6 points. So these wild swings we saw with Ann before in the spring, in the summer, and pre-Labor Day, and then post-Labor Day, and then finally Trump takes a 7-point lead, was not real. Maybe that's methodology. Maybe, I don't know. I can't speak to that. But we never had Trump leading by any less than 6 and any more than almost 10 points. I mean, if you go back and look at the Election 20 Public Polling Project, you will see we were dead on. And we took it off the table in, I believe, August, Laura, something like that, ballpark. We said this state is not competitive. It's done. All right. With ado, Ben Carson had left. They played that dirty trick. Cruz got some of that support. They consolidated. And this is the theme of today's show, whether or not any of these arguments make sense. And remember, they're happening. This is happening with the backdrop of Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis making the case to donors. They are the best to consolidate the field against Donald Trump. Going to meet Mitt Romney and company and Paul Ryan and trying to get them to be convinced that they are the best to take on Donald Trump. By the way, Mitt Romney had some horrible things to say about Ron DeSantis. But anyway, this is all happening, and that's the media love a horse race, right? And here, what is this? As Nikki Haley pulls even, or I'm sorry, I got to look this way for you guys. Donald Trump builds on big lead as Nikki Haley pulls even with Ron DeSantis in Iowa poll. And everyone's talking about Haley's surge. Steve Kornacki, who works for NBC News and was a part sponsor of this poll, did a great job in a thread explaining why it may look like 43-16 and Nikki Haley's lead, no doubt, was, not lead, but she leads DeSantis even among suburbanites and independents now, a 10-point shift. You can't think it's that impressive when you dig into the numbers, which we're going to do. It's not. Her support looks a lot like Tim Scott's did when we ran our poll in Iowa a couple months ago in July. He's just a flavor du jour. This is how Iowa works. And then he faded. And now Nikki Haley is taking his place as the Marco Rubio of this cycle. By the way, we're going to miss Halloween for you guys. Happy Halloween. I love it. I got my little pumpkin shirt on. I love Halloween. Love it, love it, love it. Sorry, I'm not a Puritan and I'm not a Mormon. So, keep the Jenna Ellis comments to yourself. All right. Anyway, Carson played a key role after the Iowa caucuses because he endorsed Trump. It was a big deal. And it said to the evangelicals and the rest of the country, who Ben Carson is, even though he's at Seventh-day Adventist, right? They loved him. Evangelicals loved him. He's one of them, or they viewed him as one of them. So by him endorsing Donald Trump, he lent Donald Trump credibility with these voters. Now, it's not that he even needs it. He doesn't need it. Even with Seltzer's poll, who has been the least bullish on Trump's lead with the evangelicals, it is still plus more than 20%. Way different than anything we saw in 15 and 16, by the way. All right. Yet another reason why all of these, but at this time in comparisons, are just wishful thinking. All right. So I was going to save this clip before we ran it. But you know what? No, Ben's going to lead us into it anyway. I mean, the poll's going to lead us into some of the other comment Ben made that I think is important. But let's roll into this, okay? I read you this already. The Des Moines Register, NBC News, Mediacom Iowa poll. It's like, shows 43% of likely Republican caucus goers pick Trump as their first choice, with DeSantis and Haley tied for second at 16. And I chose this in the video. Register takes Iowa's pulse. The Iowa poll is a state institution, and it's usually right on the money too. It was not right on the money in 16. It was not right on the money in 20. All right. The general election, she did better in 16 in the general election. I think in 20, it was widely gyrating all over the place. But at the end of the day, right before her final poll, was pretty close to it. She really gained a lot of notoriety, being the only one to really pick up on Obama's surge against Clinton in 08. Clinton had even led in Gallup and many others. And by the way, that other fake comparison to 08 with Hillary Clinton's lead over Barack Obama is driven largely by Gallup's very poor performance. They would not be able to make that comparison if Gallup did not perform so poorly in 08. They repeatedly and grossly underestimated Obama's support all over the country and nationally. So in the RCP average, Gallup influenced the RCP average significantly. Others did not show Hillary Clinton with almost Trump-sized leads over Barack Obama at any points, and you could pick in the primary that makes you feel better and makes your argument, cherry pick it in any month, point of the year, cycle, whatever that you think makes your argument stronger. You're still missing on the point that Gallup was really out there in left field, and they were polling a lot, and they influenced the average quite a bit. But the truth is, you can go back and actually see quite a few things that were not, super, their dire warning leading up to the reelection of Ronald Reagan, that his coalition in Iowa was fading, all right? Remarkable coalition is melting like a snow fort in the February thaw. Okay. He went on to absolutely thrash Walter Mondale, and not only in Iowa, but all over the country. All right. But I picked that for a reason. The truth is, at this point, between the exaggeration of the record of accuracy and the decision to tank the poll, the Iowa caucus poll, ahead of the Democratic caucuses in 2020, I have long now, 3 years long, decided to look at this poll with a little bit more skepticism. All right. Years ago, in 16, for instance, I would have told you that if Ann Seltzer has a different result than I do in the state of Iowa, and she did, she was much more pro-bullish on Trump than we were. Our last poll in Iowa was Trump +5, I think. Maybe Trump +3 in 16. I'd have to go back and look. Ohio, I made a similar mistake. We called the state itself right, but we understated Donald Trump's share. In 16, I would have told you, listen to Ann. It's her state. Now, she's polling Florida as well, and if she is different than my result in Florida, listen to me. I know the state better than she does. I poll it better than she does. She ended up being pretty damn accurate in Florida, too. But now, all of these years later, 7 years later, I don't feel the same. Support for Nikki Haley has swelled in Iowa. The former United Nations ambassador has pulled even with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in what has become a heated battle for second place in the first of the nation caucus state. And as we read this, I'm going to stop and address a bunch of people that, listen, Twitter has long been a site where fake experts go on there, give their opinions and their hot takes, and pretend like they know what they're talking about. Polling has been a victim of these people for a while. However, this cycle, polling misinformation has gotten considerably worse on the site known as X, formerly known as Twitter. And I'm going to stop and have to point out things that as we go on that I've heard people say, and we have to correct the record. But former President Donald Trump still dominates the race. He's ahead by 27 percentage points, a lead that has expanded slightly despite his mounting legal problems. A new Des Moines Register NBC, now we all know, 43% of Republican caucus goers choose Trump as their choice for president, up from 42% in the Iowa poll in August. Still a small sample. I'm going to tell you right now, 400 voters is a small sample. Iowa is a small state, so it's not as bad, but the sampling error is nearly plus or minus 5%. So remember that when we talk about subgroups, because subgroups for sampling error is higher. That being said, Another thing from the DeSantis influencer crowd has been to look at the sampling error in the poll overall and say that the poll is worthless. Why? Because it has a nearly 5% sampling error. However, for the mentally retarded out there, or mathematically retarded, I should say, and I mean that in the very true sense of the word, 27 points is not 5. It is greater than 5 percentage points. So if you're going to portray yourself as a Twitter expert, know how to do basic arithmetic. 27 is greater than 4.9, right? So we know Iowa is crazy, folks, is the point I'm trying to make. And we know that we have seen some real big buffs with Iowa, and we know Iowa moves and, can change quite a bit as time goes on. But never have there been 27-point mistakes. That's not, and never from Ann Selzer. That is simply not likely. It's not reality, especially when you consider that Ann is among the most favorable polls to non-Trump candidates. The University of Iowa poll has Trump at, I think, 53. All right, done by Coefficient or Signal. I mean, this is basic arithmetic. A lot of stuff, like I said, is just demonstrably false, and we have to point out some very simple things here. And DeSantis and Haley are now tied at 16. That's a drop from 19 for DeSantis since their last poll, and that's an increase of 10% for Haley since their last poll. You just have Haley rising. You have DeSantis kind of holding on for second place, said pollster J.N. Seltzer, president of Seltzer and Company, which conducted the Iowa poll. Both of them are on ground that you could only describe as shaky compared to the solid ground that Donald Trump stands on. If anything, he's showing improvement. Now, for all the twists and turns that they did editorializing, picking quotes that they thought would make the horse race sound better, that's media for you. Their job is really not to cover a poll correctly from a statistician's point of view or even a friggin' liberal art pollster point of view. Their job is to make a horse race sound more than it is so they can get more clicks and sell more advertising revenue. The truth of the matter is, not even George Bush in 2000 or back then in 99 at this point showed such strength. And he went on to win with 41%, roughly, a little over 41. Trump is polling stronger than him, and his vote is more solid. It is much more solid. Poll was also conducted before Mike Pence took off. People always ask me, how can Mike Pence's support go to Donald Trump when we show people it's so small? Mike Pence, we struggle to find any kind of real base for. He never had a base that made sense. 1 month, it would be just a few people who have an education throwing the vote away. Maybe they don't like Donald Trump. The next month, it would be, hey, wasn't Mike Pence vice president to Trump? Maybe I'll give someone other than Trump a chance, even though I really like Trump, and I'm going to choose Pence. I mean, voters can be, to varying degrees, informed. All right? There was no pattern or no base that we could discern month after month out of Pence's vote. He believed he was going to have a connection with evangelicals. What little support he did have was with evangelicals in Iowa, although both non and yes and no, are you an evangelical, so low. Again, it's hard to take out of it. There is no doubt that some of the vote from Mike Pence will probably go to Donald Trump. The second choice is a big deal, and the actively considering, which someone else said you should just dismiss. You should not dismiss it. You should take the favorability and actively considering into account with first and second choice. It is a caucus. People can be persuaded. And with the exception of Trump's voters, almost all of them still say they can be persuaded. So Nikki isn't surging here. She just has money and is spending it. DeSantis is falling. They're just rearranging the deck, folks. Every poll since the spring has just been rearranging the deck. There is no comparable example of somebody doing this well, even this early. It's not early anymore. We're getting to the point where it's not even that early for general election predictive value. Although I am somebody who definitely likes later polling for general election. The problem is that may not even hold true anymore because we're not about persuasion in this country. It's about gathering. It's about motivation. It's about turnout. Anyway, here's the overall. Recently, Haley and DeSantis have spent more time battling with each other than Donald Trump. And I actually had a graph I wanted to show you, and I didn't get it uploaded. But DeSantis has not been spending his money at this point in the last month attacking. In the month of October, he basically stopped attacking Trump as much, and he began attacking Haley. DeSantis definitely spending a lot more money, but after spending money promoting DeSantis, the super PAC backing his campaign is now almost full attack on Nikki Haley in the state of Iowa. All right. So in October, initially $977,000 ad buy opposing Haley in Iowa, which began running on October 17th. It was followed by another $1.2 million buy on October 22nd. Again, focused on Iowa. And it was occasionally attacking Trump. Americans for Prosperity also doing that. Now they have turned their ire since April away from promoting DeSantis, attacking Trump, to attacking Haley and slightly promoting DeSantis. That's the shift in strategy. All right. And both candidates announced they would increase their Iowa presence as the race to caucus day on January 15th enters its final stretch. And she's talking about those ad buys. I just wanted to give you the dollars and the real deals on that. Aaron Rush, he's voting. He's at this point lists DeSantis as his top choice, but is weighing support for Haley. He's one of these people, like I said, that's just reshuffling the deck. And honestly, where it's if you read some of the interviews that Ann did and Ann's team did with some of these voters, you can see the impact from DeSantis's electability argument that he had been running and the American for Prosperity ad buys that they had been running that basically says, don't nominate Donald Trump because he increases turnout. And we need low turnout to win. And DeSantis has a better chance of winning. Trump can't beat Biden. Most people, most Republican voters don't believe that. But in Iowa, they heard that a lot. That's why you'll see that best to beat Biden. Trump still leads, but he leads by less than you'll see in other states. Does the data back that up anymore? Absolutely not. Not only from us, but from USA Today and others in this very state. Without Donald Trump on the ballot, it's no longer a Republican +8 state, a Republican +10 state. It goes back to being even to R+2. Meaning, a drop in turnout among Trump voters could cost another Republican nominee the state of Iowa. And by the way, it has voted to the left of Ohio in most modern presidential elections. So I don't know why you wouldn't expect it to do so again. Obama carried it twice, 12 and 6 points respectively. Even though he barely carried Ohio. And by that way, that's another one, which we have polled and others have polled. Without Donald Trump on the ballot, it goes back to being a battleground state. I'm of the opinion, even though the polls show Nikki Haley doing better than Ron DeSantis, I think that's bullcrap. I still think DeSantis loses a bunch of battleground states because he's not Donald Trump. And you need the Obama-Trump voter. You need the new Trump voter to get out or you're going to lose. But I still think he does better than Haley. I'm not sure Nikki Haley carries a single battleground state other than something like North Carolina. Maybe. I think it's possible she loses Florida. I do. We polled Florida several times now. It's been tight. In the last 2 polls we did in Florida, it's been tight without Trump, even with Governor DeSantis. And we're going to go over is the risk he's putting. It's already done. The risk is done. So I guess he's probably just decided there's no point but to continue because I've already killed myself. I go back and find the episode from a month and a half ago where I clearly stated that soon Republicans are going to turn on him. Florida Republicans. And by the time he goes back a beaten man, he will go back with 2 things he's never had to deal with before. A party that hates him and an adversarial legislature. Anyway, Aaron Rush believes that. That's why he said he likes Tim Scott, but he doesn't think he can beat Trump. He's not, because those ads are not focused on that. The ads are focused on Governor DeSantis, and now Haley is very good at taking, much better than Team DeSantis, at taking advantage of good news cycles. All right, so Scott is down now from 9 to 7. Christie is at 4, down from 5. Vivek, which I told you would be a difficult state for Vivek, Iowa is not the right fit for him. He held steady at 4, even though his favorability rating really got bad. North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum rose from 2 to 3, and Asa Hutchinson rose from 0 to 1. Ryan Binkley is at 0, failing again to gain any support at all in the Iowa poll, and you can see it here. This shows a steady increase for Donald Trump, a steady decline for Ron DeSantis as time has gone on. Former Vice President Mike Pence dropped out. Pence's first choice votes were redistributed to poll respondents' second choice candidates in the poll. All right, that's very important to note. Again, Laura, I don't know how the hell every time there's a fly, it comes in the studio room. Why can't it go anywhere else? It drives me nuts. All right. Overall, it's getting cold. They're struggling to figure out where to go. Overall, likely Republican caucus goers say their first choice is more about leadership, is more about the issues, than leadership style. And that is something that can be a double-edged knife for both, DeSantis and Haley, who have made different varying arguments about consolidating the field. The fact of the matter is, it's very difficult to beat Trump on the issues. He has a record, and the man never gave. He never budged. He never threw his base under the bus. He just didn't. You can come up with your stupid little arguments that don't make sense about, hey, he told people he was, China was, he didn't build the wall, but he lied about making China pay for the wall, or Mexico pay for the wall. Instead, the U.S. paid for the wall. You paid for the wall. Hold on. You realize what you're saying makes no logical sense. He either built the wall and got you to pay for it and broke his promise to get Mexico to pay for it, or he didn't build it at all and nobody paid for it. And the truth is obviously always somewhere in the middle. And now DeSantis is talking about how he supports certain things that in 2017, when Donald Trump brought them for a vote, he opposed in the House. He refused Trump's plan to actually make Mexico and others pay for parts of the border wall. He did. He voted no. So I mean, that's the reality. 404 likely caucus goers in this poll, plus or minus 4.9%. First choice about the issues. This is all I'm trying to speed through this. I want to get to the crosstabs of this, and I want to talk about consolidation. Nikki rose, though, but some of this is important. Rose with independents and suburbanites. All right. Trump, though, however, still leads with independents. And he actually rose 12 points. In August, Trump and DeSantis were nearly even among independent caucus goers, and they're about 2 in 10 of the electorate, with 21% supporting Trump as their first choice and 19% supporting DeSantis. Now, Trump leads with DeSantis 33-12, but Haley has surpassed DeSantis with independents at 22%, up from 10% in August. This is a group that is fickle and on the small side, Seltzer said, but it could be an important group to watch as the rate progresses. Independents make up about 21% of the poll's respondents. Again, for those pointing out Seltzer's polls in October 15, and elsewhere, Seltzer was actually not wrong about her final poll, which was like Trump +2 or something. It was a Trump plus narrow lead. She was not wrong about that. And it wasn't turnout being historically high that caused Ted Cruz to surpass him and the Seltzer poll to be wrong. And simply did not wait correctly for the share of the vote that evangelicals would make up. She pegged perfectly that Ted Cruz would carry them by about 12 points. I think she added it at 11. He won them by 12 or something like that. It's very, very close. The problem is that she didn't realize they wouldn't be around 45% of the electorate. They would instead be around 60+% of the electorate. All right. Here's another problem for non-Trump people coming up here. This, by the way, is not, again, this is not this is not a Republican voter. Kelly Hester, she identified as an independent. She chose Haley. And then this is something that Haley's going to have to contend with if people would get to know her. I tweeted about this before. Once people would get to know her and she was on par, like familiarity wise, like DeSantis is, and who she is as a person and where she is on the issues, she would lose people. Here's a socially liberal person who is fiscally conservative, fiscally Republican, calls herself an independent and is backing Haley, and then goes on to cite the very issues that Republicans have pissed her off on. So she's not going for DeSantis because she thinks he's too right-wing on social issues. All right. The truth is Donald Trump is the most liberal on those issues. Not even liberal, but he's the most transgender or abortion rights. They were literally mailers making Trump out to be pro-transgender for kids. I mean, it's nuts, right? Haley is not at all pro-gay rights. Haley is not at all pro-abortion rights, and she is certainly not pro-transgender. She probably would be because she cracked on the Confederate flag thing real hard, but that's not who she's campaigning as right now. She probably would, though, govern that way. I mean, honestly, I'm just being real. She'd govern like a neocon, socially liberal neocon. That's how she would go. Because there's no real core there, folks. All right? There's no core. She thinks that Trump has ticked off too many people and would not be able to beat Joe Biden. Again, they're picking minority people. They have to in order to show you who are actually saying that they'll caucus for Haley or DeSantis, because only a minority believes this anymore. She doesn't know. Miss Hester does not know. And maybe she'll wind up listening to this, but Miss Hester doesn't know that her main issue with Trump is actually not true. All right. Again, Trump has the most likely ability to beat Joe Biden. There's just no doubt about it anymore, folks. It's debatable. Only people who are paid influencers still make this case, or paid pollsters. One more possible advantage for Haley is that she gets more broader support than DeSantis. I would argue that that's true. However, her support is super, super weak. All right. Forget about the independents, and I think there's obvious issues here. Haley leads now DeSantis among voters who have a college degree, but again, Trump leads both of them. So they're writing this wrong. Among voters that are age men under 45, 22 to 13. But again, Trump leads with every single demographic group instead of the suburb where him and Haley are very close. All right. But every other demographic is a Trump demographic. Among the DeSantis voters, 27% said Haley is their second choice. 41% said Trump is their second choice. Let me take a time out real quick. This is a big deal when it comes to the point of this show, the topic, the overall theme of this show. Who has the best you should get out of the race case, right? So they can consolidate the field. If you're Team Haley, you could simply say, if I get out of the race, or if DeSantis gets out of the, okay, let me put this back. I'm being, Laura's right. Sometimes I get too ridiculous. If DeSantis were to get out of the race, most of his vote, 16%, about 7.5 would go to Donald Trump. That would put Donald Trump way over 50% with his first and second choicers. Way over. Goodbye. It's a wrap. If Haley got out of the race, 12%, which is about 2 points. That would add like 2 points. It's like what's 16%, right? What's 12% of 1.6? 10%, just to make it easy for you, is 10% of 16 is 1.6. Another 2% on top of that, if you round, it's of another 2 percentage points. However, you're talking about a good 7 points plus that are going to go to Trump if DeSantis gets out. So that's DeSantis's argument. The problem is he ran into people who didn't like him. Personally, I'm talking about as a candidate. He made the more correct argument when they went to go meet with donors. And when they went to go meet with Romney and Ryan, he had the more correct argument. If I get out of the race, all of my people go to Trump and it's over. Haley said, he's capped and he can't beat Trump because he needs Trump's voters to win. In truth, DeSantis's argument was more correct. But they're both, this is what the media wants you to get into this horse race about who should get out and then consolidate the field. Unfortunately, one has a better case than the other at this moment. I think Haley's case is particularly weak because her support is weak. It could go back to Tim Scott tomorrow. If something happened that was beneficial to him in the cycle, or if a Fox poll came out showing him beating Biden by 6, I have a real funny feeling a bunch of donors would give him more money and he'd reconnect his ad slots that he canceled, and they would run ads in Iowa and he'd go back up a little bit in Iowa and we'd reshuffle the deck again. But none of them can make the case that if everyone else dropped out of the race, they could get to 50+1. They cannot make that case. This is not 2015, October of 2015, and this is not even 2016 after Iowa. Trump is not in a 30% position, beating everybody, threatening to hit 40. Trump at his weakest, in the weakest state polls he has, in the weakest states he has, Trump is in the 40s, and in the consensus, he is above 50. First choice. There is nothing you can do about that. For Haley, 34% go to DeSantis, and this is her argument that DeSantis wouldn't even get all of my voters if I left, because 19% would go to Scott, 14% would go to Burgum, and only 12, because you could see the Haley lane is like the anti-Trump lane, for sure. To my mind, she's done the best job differentiating that she is the non-Trump candidate, to the extent they don't see him as even as a second choice. I would agree with that. Of those who name Trump as their first choice, 41% say DeSantis is their second choice. Haley, only 16. Ramaswamy, now 15. All right, so here is where it really is just the end of the road, though, for them. I mean, this is a real problem. Again, kudos to Steve Kornacki for at least trying to be honest in this cycle. First-time caucus goers, he's at 49%. DeSantis only 15, and Haley only 14. What does that mean? The higher the turnout, and again, here's another, I'm going to bust another myth right now. You hear from Steve Deese and others. The higher the turnout, the better Donald Trump is going to do. The more first-time caucus goers, the faster the door closes on non-Trump candidates. DeSantis only 15, Haley only 14. New voters are Trump voters. Those who name Trump as their first choice are also far more enthusiastic about caucusing. 30% of likely caucus goers only, above all, say they're extremely enthusiastic about their first choice. Not Trump. He's more than twice what it is for DeSantis. Nearly twice. Among Haley voters, only 19%. That's it. So you have about half of Trump's voters saying they're extremely enthusiastic to go out and caucus for him. Overall, it's only 30, and DeSantis only 25. He is that 30%. His voters make up that 30%. Here is the chart that shows that. It is not mail-in voting time, folks. Enthusiasm still matters in a caucus. You need your voters to want to go out and caucus for you. And what does that tell you? It tells you that the likelihood that there will be more first-time caucus goers coming out is much, much higher, because those are Trump voters. If you have a 25, 30-year caucus history, you're still a Trump voter, but you're a less favorable Trump voter. But if you're not, and you're new to the process, it's the first time you're going to caucus for anybody, you are far more favorable to Donald Trump. Guess what? Those are the pumped up voters. Not the ones who have history, and not the ones who, and I mean, they do. There are some that do have history and are pumped up, but the most pumped up ones out there are first-time caucus Trumpers. That is bad news for non-Trump candidates. And Trump support is also more firmly locked in. Again, they have been a lot more bearish when we ask that question, or when others have asked that question. You can choose to think Ann is closer. I happen to think we're closer. We're at a super majority to about 3 out of 4. She's been at like 63 to a super majority. I think we're actually much closer to it. Among Trump supporters, 63% said they will not change their mind. 54% overall who have a first choice say they could change their minds. Only 41% say their minds are made up. Not Trump's voters, 63%. Only 37% of Trump's votes say they could be maybe persuaded to vote for somebody else. This solid ground is what makes people want to say he's invincible. Seltzer said of Trump. Dennis Sinarski, 73, said, if Trump's not running, I would have to look to see what the other candidates stand for. Otherwise, it's Trump all the way. He's my hero. Him and Jesus are my heroes. Listen, first of all, I love talking to guys like that. Right, Laura? This is the cool guy to interview. He's a funny dude. And he keeps you entertained while you're otherwise snoring with some 4-year-old or four-year college degree or post-grad who's in their like 30s telling you about how wise they are and how they have the wisdom of all their 30 years on planet Earth. Or worse, 28, something like that. This is the guy that makes it interesting and fun. But he's a very good example of a Trump Midwest supporter. Very good example. There's nobody else. He would struggle with his decision to find somebody else. And in fact, he may not vote. All right, so you can see the difference here about could be persuaded and who could not be persuaded. Just to give you an idea, George Bush's vote, which is a lot. Again, everyone wants to point to Bush in 99 in Iowa. Only about 20% of George Bush's vote in October of 1999 said that they could not be persuaded to change their mind. And George Bush, by the way, went on to win. So his support was not as high, and it was not as firm or as solid. And yet he still went on to win. All right. What else here? All right. So moving on before we get into the tabs. Support for DeSantis and Haley are less solid. It's not even close. Is it inevitable? And then she goes on to equivocate and basically said it suggests Iowa caucus goers have not shut the door on other alternatives. No, it kind of does. If you look at where their footprints are, actively considering and second choice and first choice, it does kind of close the door. It does. Nikki Haley needs 22% to say they're actively considering her to even get near a majority altogether. It's true DeSantis ties Trump with his total footprint, which is unheard of in the state of Iowa. Both of those are very high, but 25% is actively support. The truth is DeSantis is pretty much capped at 43%, whereas Trump is capped at 55%. If you're really being strict. It's a 55-45 win. It's a Trump plus 10. If every single non-Trumper right now, every single person who said they're not even considering, like, forget about the actively considering, first and second choicers, because we're talking about consolidation here. If every single one of Doug Burgum's voters went to Ron DeSantis, if every single one of Asa Hutchinson's went to Ron DeSantis, if every single one of Ryan Binkley's voters went to Ron DeSantis, if every single one of Vivek's voters went to Ron DeSantis, which is not going to happen. You know, most of Vivek's 4% is going to Donald Trump. If every single one of Tim Scott's, if every single one of Nikki Haley's, even though we know 12% does not, goes to Ron DeSantis, he's still looking at a roughly 55 to 45% loss. Nikki Haley she wouldn't come close. She'd probably lose 60-40. And that's without me taking into consideration those who are actively considering. Not fully. That is really something. And the footprint matters. I agree with Seltzer's footprint thing. We don't always do it, but I do agree with how she's done it. It's been her thing because it's a caucus. Caucuses are funny. You better figure out whether somebody really was harboring some potential to support somebody, because when they get to that precinct and people start debating and it becomes clear that the candidate they may have walked in there to support has no friggin' path. I've seen it with my own two eyes. I've seen it happen with my own two eyes. I've heard and seen people who were never really considering Ted Cruz being told at the last minute, Ben Carson got out. Did you know that? And he's saying support Ted Cruz. And then going, really? Okay. So I think what she does here is nifty. All right, so Scott just way down on there. I don't agree with Seltzer calling anyone top tier. There is only one top tier candidate. Everyone else is in Iowa. I guess you could say there's a second tier, but there's top and bottom most everywhere else. Victoria! You know what just happened there? I got that son of a victorious Laura. Victory is mine. You guys want to know a little secret? You never clap. You never try to swat a fly. All right? You never try to swat a fly. You always clap slightly above them. It's the way their vision is. And if you can get behind them a little bit, that's even greater. And then you clap a couple inches above them because they'll go to move and fly, and they'll fly right into your clap. It's a little trick for anyone who didn't know that. All right. This is where we're at. DeSantis in this poll has the highest favorability. They are alone on this, by the way. Trump has the highest favorability. I went back and I looked at the other polls on the RCP average. That's a little bit different. Could things have changed? I don't know. Again, the 400 likely voter sample makes me nervous. I like to get a little bit, even if it's 480, 500, just like a little bit more. It makes me a little bit nervous to have like 400 on the spot for a Republican caucus. Democrats can be a little bit different, but for Republicans, they're actually more, they have more demographics that are more difficult to get and reach than Democrats. Democrats are a little bit more across the board representative of each other's views. That is not the case. There's different kinds of evangelicals. There's your, weekly attendance, one time at least evangelical. And then there's your cultural evangelical, and screwed that up in 16. That's what happened. So, it makes me a little bit nervous because that's easily the difference in their favorability numbers and unfavorability numbers can easily be explained by a sampling error. All right. Everyone else seems to have it quite the opposite. I don't see anything that has happened in this campaign that would have risen Ron DeSantis' favorability numbers, even among work conducted by people who have double dipped, meaning they're polling for third-party groups and then they're polling for Ron DeSantis, like public opinion strategies. Citizen awareness, for instance, that poll was devastating for Ron DeSantis, yet, somehow his own internals look more favorable. All right, so Scott's got high favorabilities, but he's got nowhere to go. Vivek has been viewed now more unfavorably. 41% of likely caucus goers didn't know enough about him back in August. That's now fallen to 20, and 37% have an unfavorable view of Vivek. That's up from 20. While the percentage of those who view him favorably did increase as well from 38 to 43. I think that is, they did have some attention turned on Vivek. The team DeSantis did go after him. That makes sense. Chris Christie is the most hated fat man in politics. He is the most hated guy in politics. It's not just Iowa. You'd think it would be Iowa's more conservative for Chris Christie than, for Chris Christie. And thus, Iowa would have a worse view, a more moderate Republican. New Hampshire, he'd do better. He polls better, but his unfavorability rating is still as high. I believe it was the St. Anselm College poll that had him and Mike Pence around 72% unfavorable. So he's just, nobody likes him. Mike Pence said it's not his time. You think. All right. We're coming up on the break real quick. I want to get into this. I want to talk about let's look at the document they had sent out, and then we'll be able to talk more about this consolidation a little bit. So far, just to give a look at our likely voter screen, 51% said they are definitely going to. Probably was 49, definitely increased a point, probably fell a point. So it means slightly more likely than the last poll they conducted. And notice that benefited Trump. Attended Republican caucuses in the past is now 56%, down from 60. And then the first time caucus has risen from 19 in August to where we had it, 26%. Don't you find that a little funny? She also grossly underestimated how many first-time caucus goers there would be in 2016. I believe the last final Des Moines poll had it only very, very low, and it turned out to be much higher. I don't have it in front of me. I want to say she estimated that only about 20%, 24% would be new caucus goers. And I think the Edison Research entrance polls, they have entrance, not exit in Iowa, because again, it is a caucus. You can't, you don't get them on the end. You talk to the people as they're going in to the caucus. I want to say it was in the 40s. So, I mean, it was a real significant underestimation. And the evangelical vote share, she estimated in the 40s, and it turned out to be 60 something. It was a lot. What else is worth looking at here? Here's the footprints, as you can see. Trump and DeSantis with the largest footprint. Haley and Scott behind them. But again, it's so difficult. I really cannot stress how these ridiculous comparisons to 15 don't make sense. Ben Carson, again, was not in the 30s beating Donald Trump. He had a 9-point lead, if I remember correctly, but his support was only 28%. We are talking about an incumbent or a one-time president, former president with a high favorability whose first choice is already nearing a majority. It is very, very different. And then also, even in 2015, you can go back and look it up. Right now, it's on Real Clear Politics. They were not at all, like it was like 20%, my mind is made up. Same thing with Bush. That's what's normal. Sometimes it can be even less. This is 30% overall, and it's not that different overall. But it's important. That's even more important and more significant when you consider that it all comes from Donald Trump's voters. It's just time to be a little bit realistic. I mean, the nonsense. How many months now have we listened to the same ridiculous arguments from the same unserious people with an agenda, by the way? It's time to accept reality. It's the funny irony of the question, and it's not a question. You'll notice I didn't put a question mark on it on the banner image today because it's really not a question. The episode name does not have a question mark on it because there is a very clear answer. The best person to consolidate the field is Donald Trump. There is no second consolidation when the leader's footprint with his first and second choice alone is above a majority. And again, I got to point out that Ann is a little bit of an outlier here. She is showing support levels that are lower than most other people, to include internal polls. Can we be honest here? Somebody had sent me this just before I went on to remind me that Ron DeSantis' own internal pollster has him losing head-to-head against Donald Trump 65-35, if I remember correctly. Where are we? It's a little bit less than that. I'm sorry. It is 58-35 in a head-to-head. 400 likely voters just wrapped up at the beginning of October. Trump plus 23 against DeSantis head-to-head. So, I mean, it's getting more than a little annoying. It's getting more than a little annoying. And I hear voters loud and clear when we're talking to these people because they seem to think these people just don't get what time it is. Today, and I know it's 1 o'clock, today, the trial starts in Colorado with a crazy left-wing judge to try to bump Trump off the ballot. All the other lawfare that's going on. It seems like most Republican voters understand that the question here, if you don't understand, if you don't understand that this could be the last election that you get to select the candidate that you want, then you really have no business running for president. If you're making ridiculous arguments like the ones we have to point out on X all the time that are just ludicrous because you're bitter, you're immature, you're a baby, you're self-centered, you're ambitious, and things aren't working out for you. You may need a pardon because you have too many issues coming your way. Whatever it may be that's like on their particular mind. If they put something like that before the very real concern that voters have, again, that this literally could be the last Democratic election in this country, then you're not serious enough to ask voters to make you the president at this point. You're not serious enough to take voters to even consider when you're pushing your views and your ideas about who you think should be nominated onto them. You're petty at this point. So when a majority of voters think this could be it, if this doesn't go a certain way, if this goes wrong, then all we'll have left is the ability to pick, if we're lucky, from a list of state-approved schmucks that are never going to change anything or do anything. They're never going to right the ship. They're never going to protect liberty. They're going to cave. They're going to do what they always do. They're going to be politicians. They're going to do what the state wants them to do. That's not real democracy. That's not real self-governance. Too many Republican voters understand that's what time it is right now. Too many understand that. And too many Republican voters are not, and I think this goes to Seltzer's comment about Nikki Haley making herself the better, or more clearly, the anti-Trump candidate. Well, right, because she's a neocon. And Ron DeSantis has been trying to hide his neoconservatism. So she's done that very well. But voters, Republican voters particularly, have no interest in conflict or war. There are too many other issues, pressing issues that have to be dealt with. There are no vital national security risks that we need to get involved with right now. They're not going to cost us our superpower status. They're not going to cost us our children's future. We are. Our own government will. Our own failings will. Domestic policy will. That's the mood of the electorate this year. And that's something none of the non-Trump candidates have been able to tap into. They don't trust them. Some with good reason, openly so. Look at what you have people like Haley say. And then you have another one who's trying to straddle the fence and play chameleon whenever it suits him. All right, listen. I'm not going to take a break because I do have to end the show a little bit early today. Locals, I hope you stick around because I want to try. I want to try this. All right. I think you guys will find that it's worth it. All right. I think I'm going to wind up staying home instead of going. Is it snowing somewhere? Oh, it's a joke. I get it. Settles on Christie's head. I get it. I think that I'm going to wind up probably staying home because I want to make sure that we implement as much as we possibly can. I really think that this year I want to use the special elections, and this is the big one, right? I want to use all these special elections that we've been covering to as like not test runs, because I want to do test runs before, but like this is how we would do it. Because once, and Laura, I don't know if you're there to pop on. I don't know if she's able to pop in and say anything about it, but it's like election day is a Super Bowl and the presidential election is even more than a midterm. Your eyes are everywhere, all over the place. So, we're kind of using these as like, yeah, I guess test run is the right word. I haven't updated this, but let's wrap off who's got the best consolidation argument. According to betting odds, let me see if it's changed since I grabbed it already. Let me see if it's changed. Hold on 1 second. Give me 1 second. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Here we go. I don't know that it has. Let me just compare it. 34.1. Oh, Trump's up today. Biden's down. Let me show you the difference. I'll show you the difference. Here's where it was yesterday. The presidential betting odds, DeSantis in 7th place. DeSantis being behind not only Trump, Biden, but Newsom, Haley, and Kennedy and Obama. That's friggin' embarrassing. Right? He remains so today. He remains behind all of those people today. It's just that today, you can see Trump was at 33.9 there. Let me stop it. Let me grab the other one, and I'll show you the new ones that are just out. Again, you know how I feel about betting odds, but I do think it's worth looking at them and pointing out because it's with the sentiment, people's sentiment about where they feel things are going, right? Gallup's approval for Joe Biden is really bad. Approved 37, disapproved 59. That's even worse than where Trump was before he went in. And no, when Obama, it's not the same situation that it was for Obama. This idea that, Obama was in the same spot Biden was. He managed to right the ship. Bull crap. Obama was never this bad. Never. Obama had a base. Very difficult for Obama to even fall into the 30s. Anyway, you can see Trump is up from 33.9 yesterday to 34.1. Biden is down from 31.8 yesterday to 30.9. Newsom ticked up slightly yesterday, but now has fallen again to 8.4. He was at 8.5 yesterday. Haley fell to 5. And she's up now because of the Iowa poll. Sorry. She fell to 5 yesterday. Now is up again to 5.4. But yesterday was tied with Kennedy at also 5 flat. Kennedy remains 5 flat today, along with Obama, who actually ticked up from 4.7. So they're tied. And DeSantis remains steady at, he fell again. I thought he remained steady at 4.3. Nope, he was 4.5 yesterday. And Kamala Harris was 2.9 yesterday. She's now 3. Vivek Ramaswamy is flat at 2. All right. Here's the trend for the betting odds. As you can see, Ron DeSantis's fall from grace is one of the biggest political malpractice catastrophes you will ever see in your life. All right. I don't know. Scott Walker was not nearly this bad. Not even close. I'm telling you, Walker was considered a dark horse from the beginning, never the favorite or the alternative to. He was just a dark horse. He came in swinging. It looked good for him. He was polling really well in early polling. He showed the ability to carry both Iowa and New Hampshire, which was very unique. So that was a pretty big bomb. Jeb Bush was a pretty big bomb. This is the biggest bomb you're going to see. It far surpasses Rudy Giuliani, because Rudy Giuliani did the Florida strategy, and that was controversial back then. Rudy Giuliani none of these people ever spent the money that Ron DeSantis has spent. The sheer amount of money, the sheer amount of mistakes that they have made, the amateur hour, sending your own countdown clock for your own client, the amateur hour with the Twitter announcement, the amateur hour with the Tucker statement and flip-flop over Ukraine, on and on and on and on, the hyping constantly of wait until this and then failing to meet those expectations, which is a cardinal sin in politics. You never overpromise and underperform. You will get stuck in a never-ending negative loop, negative coverage loop, and that is what has happened to them. This is the biggest political catastrophe you will probably not see another one. Gary Hart is what I'm thinking of. But Gary Hart was different. Gary Hart had an affair, got caught, and that's what cratered him. He was the shoo-in. He never made a mistake. He never misread the electorate. He never let his consultants drive him into the ground. Gary Hart didn't spend $100 million in a quarter to fail. Love this circle. Love the circle. This is one of the biggest political blunders you're ever going to witness, ladies and gentlemen. You're not going to witness another one like this. Not for a long time. Speaking of which, about a month and a half ago, I told you what was going to happen, didn't I? I told you what was going to happen if he did not go home and he waited too long. Oh, speaking of the mood of the electorate, I forgot. Let's roll this clip and then we'll come back and look.
One man had the courage to take on the political establishment and give the people a voice in Washington with no concern about what it would cost him. You know, Donald Trump lost millions, if not billions of dollars, and he's been attacked constantly and demonized, and yet he's still there. They haven't gotten rid of him. They're trying to do everything in their power to get rid of him because he's the biggest threat to the administrative state and to the swamp. I don't call it a swamp, I call it a cesspool. And they will do anything possible to get rid of him because he's the existential threat to their continuation of power.
So that's how most Republican voters feel. All right. Ben Carson did a very good job summing that up. And what instead did DeSantis do? Oh, look, he said Sioux City instead of Sioux Falls. He said Sioux Falls instead of Sioux City. Corny shit. Corny shit. Meanwhile, all dismissive of this, which I told you was going to happen. This is utterly humiliating. To have your party, here is the Florida Republican Assembly, which is charter affiliate of the National Federation of Republican Assemblies, passing a resolution telling Ron DeSantis to fold it up and come home. That you are failing as a governor. There are things that need to be done. You're failed as a political candidate for president, and you need to come home. Section 4, Article 4, Section 1A, and they said this is nothing, by the way. It's something. It's utterly humiliating, and it is showing you that the pundit prophecy that I laid out a month and a half ago is coming to fruition. That his lawmakers, his party, will not be kissing his ass any longer. He will come home badly wounded and weakened, and the state of Florida is going to suffer for it. He's going to have an adversarial legislature, which he's never had before. You see that with some of the legislators flipping their endorsement. They're not afraid of him anymore. Many of them endorsed him because of fear or because of pay for play, which he's going to have a problem with. People are investigating allegations of pay for play. I would just say take comfort in the fact that politicians normally do not get prosecuted for even severe cases of pay to play, because that's what we call perfectly normal corruption. Article 4, Section 1A of the Florida Constitution clearly states that the governor shall take care that the laws of the state be faithfully executed, shall commission all officers of the state and counties, and transact all necessary business with the officers of government. Whereas Governor Ron DeSantis was elected to serve the people of the state of Florida and to complete his 4-year term. And whereas Governor Ron DeSantis has been using his position as governor to campaign for the office of the President of the United States, taking him away from his official duties and responsibilities to the citizens of Florida, frequently at taxpayer expense, which is a bad thing to have in a resolution like this. And whereas Governor Ron DeSantis' presidential campaign has been met with a lack of enthusiasm by voters nationally and has not gained any significant momentum. In fact, to the contrary. And I mean, do we have to go on and on? Therefore, be it resolved. I mean, there are some goodies in here, though. The auto insurance. Yeah, let me read it. Some of it. Whereas DeSantis' presidential campaign has caused a distraction in the mechanisms of government within Florida, and the interests of Florida residents have been placed secondary to those of his political campaign. They're saying that he's put his campaign, his political ambition, above his duties and above the residents of Florida. This is from your own party. This is one of the most humiliating things I've ever seen happen to a presidential candidate. Public issues in dire need of detention or correction are the following: homeowners and auto insurance, of which premiums have skyrocketed, banning the jab, no mandatory required vaccines, correction of omissions and defects in the 2022 open carry legislation, legislating prohibiting any presence of non-Florida law enforcement agencies such as the Capitol Police within Florida, demands for justice for the January 6th DC political prisoners, of whom on a daily basis more and more hidden exculpatory evidence continues to surface. And by the way, Florida has the most defendants. That's why they're pissed. To surface, indicating that January 6th was indeed a 2020 Pelosi Schumer sponsored hidden or uniquely American replay of the 1933 Berlin Reichstag fire. Additionally, legislation prohibiting Florida's assimilation into the World Economic Forum, the WHO, the Vienna Organization, falsely known for implying its advocacy of security and cooperation, otherwise known as the OSCE, OSDIRH, but in reality, known for unlawful interference in elections, which is a big case going on in Florida, by the way, and for strengthening and enforcement of protections against unlawful and corrupt persecution and prosecution of American citizens. All of these and more are issues in need of immediate action by Governor DeSantis. Therefore, be it resolved that the Florida Republican Assembly urges Governor Ron DeSantis to conclude his presidential campaign and return to Florida to continue to serve out the remainder of his term as governor. Furthermore, the Florida Republican Assembly requests that Governor DeSantis rededicate himself to the needs of Florida residents and prioritize their interest over his personal political ambitions. Holy shit. The Florida Republican Assembly recognizes that campaigning for office is an important aspect of the political process, but elected officials must always prioritize the needs of their constituents. We call upon Governor DeSantis and all elected officials of Florida to fulfill their duties with integrity and commitment to the people. Public service is a privilege, not a career advancement opportunity. And elected officials must always place the interest of their constituents first. Holy crap. Witnessed by hand and seal, verifying the foregoing resolution adopted by unanimous vote the 27th day of October in the year of our Lord 2023. Peter Caracas. Oh my God. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that in my entire career. And they're trying to dismiss it as irrelevant. Not only is it relevant, but it's a foreshadowing of what you're going to see when he returns to Florida, which is truly sad because who's going to pay for this? The people of Florida are going to pay for this. This is one, I'm going to read several things that I got from people. Friends, family, political members, leaders, right? Here's one of them. Basically, the Republican Party head in the state of Florida is telling Ron to throw the towel in on his presidential campaign because he's neglected the duties of governorship of the state of Florida, effective immediately. Here's another one. Hold on. You see this? Personally, I don't care for this man anymore. That's a state legislator. This is 100% humiliating. There's just no way to cover it otherwise. This is bad. Very, 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 very bad. All right. Before we go, again, I just want to remind people about a couple of things. Of course, the best place to follow us is on Locals. Sign up, peoplespundit.locals.com. Election coverage, early poll results, a whole bunch of other stuff. The book club was awesome yesterday. As always, I do want to try to figure out a better time for the book club. I don't want to be distracted by kids' competitions and stuff and missing a whole bunch of, well, I don't want to be distracted by it. I want to see them, but I also don't want to continuously cancel book club. So we're going to have a conversation about that eventually. Maybe I'll just start a live chat and we'll BS about it. Or maybe I'll use the testing session to talk about it, but probably need everyone's thoughts. So, that participate in it. So active participants that are there every week, put your comment in kind of thing. I'm probably going to do that. YouTubers, members, you should get the November 7 live coverage too. If something gets screwed up, because it's not as simple, use the code to go to Locals. All right. And you should stay at Locals. Talked about this quite a bit. You want to do both. I see a lot of people that do both. And that's really, believe us, from Laura and I, from the bottom of our hearts, that's ultimate support. And we really, really appreciate it. It's just, we do, encourage people to migrate. We are encouraging people to migrate over. The fees you're giving for the super chats and stuff like that, they are a lot more. Rumble, I know it's not, where YouTube, some people think it should mimic it completely, but it's come a very long way and it's always had our back. So, you want to give super chats, stuff like that. I'd much rather you give it through Rumble or Locals than through than YouTube. But YouTube typically surpasses them all the time. So I get it. But I want to get that in. Again, that's for November 7th. Coverage starts at 6 p.m. because you will see some state closures. And let me see if I can get those up. I got them. We're going to have, again, the Virginia State House and the House of Delegates, Kentucky gubernatorial election. Oh, the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court general election. Forgot about that. We're going to have that. Ohio issue 1, which is the right to reproductive decisions amendment. Ohio issue 2, which is the, again, marijuana legalization initiative. Listen, every time liberals fail, they come back. Every time liberal special interest fails, they come back. That's what they did with marijuana, and they were smart enough to put it on the ballot with an abortion thing. So get ready. I don't want to say I'll wait, but they were smart. North Carolina, Republicans in North Carolina have been very smart with ballot initiatives. I would strongly suggest you get back on it and do it again, especially now that you have a state Supreme Court majority and super majorities in the legislature, and Roy Cooper's about to get his ass replaced by a Republican. So get that stuff on the ballot. People are going to want to vote Republican for governor with those super majorities. So you put things about Second Amendment rights on there. You put things about voter integrity issues and procedures on there. You got the Supreme Court that's going to back it up. Justice Allen's not going to let you down. Do it now. Be as smart as Democrats. Mississippi's gubernatorial election, and the Rhode Island special election for U.S. House of Representatives, District 1. District 1, we're going to have that too. Links will be up. Ton of them need to be built. Things need to be tested. That's why I'm saying I don't know if I'm going to go to this. That's great. It's an honored invite. I just don't know that I can get it all done. Let me add this to your plate before we go. Here are the 2023 state open and poll times. All right, Locals got all of this. All right, if you're a member of Locals, you got all of this. Poll and open close times. There's some information here. If you need it, you need to find polling locations. But Kentucky, the polls are open from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. All of these are local times. Mississippi, 7 to 7. Ohio, 6:30 to 7:30. Pennsylvania, 7 to 8. Rhode Island, 7 to 8 as well. Virginia, 6 to 7. All right, so for Rhode Island, opening times for the presidential preference primary and the statewide primary elections are no later than 7 a.m. They can be no later. There can be some differences with some other elections. All right, so those are just real quick notes in there. But we're going to have Kentucky. We're going to have that first. That's going to close. And just as we really start to get, I suspect, a firm grip on Kentucky, which is why I'm showing you, here are the counties we need to pay attention to first. Here are the targets that Cameron and Beshear are going to have in various counties if they want to have a prayer. Remember, you cannot count out Cameron from beating Andy Beshear, even though Beshear has a strong approval rating. We're going to go over that on Wednesday. We're going to talk. This is why I need to have the show. I cannot miss shows traveling and being gone. I can't. There's literature I want to go over. I want to show you what Cameron has done, which was very smart. He is simply trying to tie Beshear to Biden and himself to Trump. I am supported by Trump. Beshear is not the conservative he claims to be. All right, so that was the right move to make. He didn't have as much money to be able to make that case in the beginning. He spent about $2 million in the final stretch trying to do that. Beshear had money. So we'll see. We'll just have to see. But polls in Kentucky have sucked and sucked badly. In all of the polls conducted in the last 10 years in the state of Kentucky, only one did not understate Republicans' final vote share. Only one. If you average them together, and that poll was wrong, but if you average them together, then you'll see that Democrats, their average vote in the polling leading up to elections is roughly the vote share they get. It is Republicans who are underestimated between 7 and 12 points. In some of these cases, it's outrageous. Average is about 7, I believe. So we went over that once before, but we're going to do it again. So you cannot count Cameron out. You just cannot. And if turnout is higher, Beshear is in deep shit. Turnout now being higher is good generally. There'll be exceptions as always, but generally speaking, Democrats are now the party of lower turnout is better for you. Republicans are now the party of higher turnout is better for you. All right. Which is something that both parties are struggling to grasp, but it's true and it's real. Higher turnout, even in places like Jefferson, it's going to be a problem for Beshear because that means he's not going to hit his 67, 70% targets. He's not. He could fall, because of Cameron's strong performance there during the primaries. So we'll see. It seems to at least indicate that Cameron did better with groups that people did not think he was going to do well with. And the Emerson poll, which has Cameron, I would say that's an outlier. It has Cameron down double digits and only in the 30s. I would say that is most certainly an outlier. It also understated Cameron's support by some 20 points in the primary. So they were really, it suggested the DeSantis back candidate Kelly was gaining on Cameron, even though Cameron kind of, kept his lead and inched a little bit. She was surging at the last minute. That never happened. She got her ass kicked. She was in third place in most counties, including Rhino counties. Right. So the burbs didn't work for them. Cameron was trading it off with a state legislator, the state lawmaker, who had taken an approach to go after rural support, and it paid off. It did well, and he outperformed Kelly Craft in several counties that we expected him to, but also several we did not, which was interesting. All right, so you cannot count David Cameron out. All right, so we're going to get those results from Kentucky first. That is when it goes live. I don't know if we're going to have these exit polls. I asked them. We'll see. And then Mississippi and Virginia will flow in after that. All right. That'll give us time to go over. Ohio's going to hit us at 7:30. Ohio, I typically reports pretty well. Pennsylvania's a pain in the butt. So is Rhode Island, but we'll just have to see how it goes. All right. So I anticipate we could probably wrap it at like 10 is shooting for it. I don't think so. 10 Eastern Standard Time. I would be shocked if we could wrap the coverage at 10 Eastern Standard Time. Shocked. 11, maybe. Right, but I do count on this being like, that's why I'm going to see about getting some people on, because I do count as this being like a very long stream. All right. Even if it's BSing while we wait for results to come in. All right. But earliest I see it ending is 10. Latest I see it ending is midnight. I think the most likely is about 11, but Virginia is going to have there's likely to be some very, very close races. Mississippi's leaning Republican. We know that. Kentucky is it leans Democrat right now on forecast, but I think they're wrong to count Cameron out. We've seen it before. We saw it when Bevin first was elected, and then Bevin put up a fight he wasn't expected to put up when he went down. Right. So polls in Kentucky are tough. They suck. They just suck. Survey USA was fired over it by the local news organization there that had been running the Bluegrass poll for years. All right, so interesting. Ohio, I think, will be pretty crystal clear. I think I know and expect what's going to happen there. Pennsylvania, Supreme Court race is either going to be a Dem blowout or it's going to be real close. All right, maybe an inch. Well, I would be shocked. It's funny, too, because a year ago, the generic Republican candidate for the Supreme Court was ahead by 5 points. Right? But there are areas, if he ekes it out, then he should absolutely be calling people in like Bucks County and other areas, that and praising the work they've done, because Bucks is doing a very good job with early vote. A model implemented seems to have had the desired effect. Yeah, they're losing the early vote, but they're still Republicans are performing about 33% better than they were in the 2021 general election. So, all right, that's it. 1:30. That gives me some time to test. Again, don't forget, I'll put that back up too. For locals, all you got to do is go scroll through and you can see the close times. But of course, that'll be part of the graphics that we'll put up during the show. You'll know what time it'll say polls close in Kentucky. You'll see the little Kentucky thing go. That's why I want to test the basics right now, because we have time where we have to test others. For people wondering why Nikki Haley is soaring up on Ron DeSantis, we played that clip last week. I told you that was a point that did in fact damage. But why Trump's vote refuses to budge on the way out. Before we run the show and the music, I'm going to play an oldie but goodie from Rush, who always sums it up quite clearly. Trump also, for the gentleman who gave the Iowa poll an interview, this is what Trump said about quitting the race just a few months ago.
They always do that. They do that. And other people would do it, but they do it pretty much better than others.
Is there anything they could throw at you legally that would convince you to drop out of the race? If you get convicted in this case in New York,
no, I'd never drop out. No, I'd never drop. It's not my thing. I wouldn't do it.
So for those who said Trump was giving up in Iowa and would drop out, I swear to God, there was a tweet from a DeSantis supporter that was really trying to gain traction. Complete and total fake news. They showed that to somebody on Trump World and Team Trump, and they laughed hysterically. You just don't know who Donald Trump is. That's ridiculous. He's not going to quit. And to play this, I'm going to leave you with the late, great Rush Limbaugh, who is explaining the psychology of a Trump voter. So why you should not at all be surprised that I will not change my mind is so historically high for Donald Trump. All right. Let me just, before I do though, wrap it up and say, what's the answer to the question of this show? It wasn't a question. The title wasn't a question. It's definitive. Trump has the best argument for why everyone else should jump out of the race. The consolidation argument does not hold water this year. It is a farce. And anyone who tells you otherwise is either too stupid to know they're wrong or patently lying because they have a vested interest in lying. Donald Trump has the best chance to beat Joe Biden, and he has the best chance to consolidate the field. That is a mathematical certainty. So I'm out. All the best.
I know they desperately want Trump gone, and I know that they desperately want it codified that Trump cannot run again, because make no mistake, they remain scared to death of you, and they remain scared to death of Trump. Trump, 75 million, 80 million votes. And I'm going to tell you, you're not going anywhere. Even if Trump does, you're not. They can't separate you from Trump. And more importantly, they can't separate you from the ideas. They can't separate you from MAGA. They can't separate you from Make America Great Again, which I think remains one of our big campaign strengths going forward. They believe that they can destroy this bond that exists between you and Trump if they somehow make Trump look bad, make Trump look like a reprobate, embarrass you about Trump. They can't do it because you came before Trump.
That's the late, great Rush Limbaugh, folks. Don't forget to smash the like button, share far and wide, subscribe, sign up on Locals, peoplespundit.locals.com. That's the best place. Support the polling, share it far and wide, and we will see you on Wednesday. Locals, I'll see you in a little bit. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers, folks.